Welcome, everyone, to Coffee with the Kingpins. I am very fortunate to have a good friend, a renowned Vedic astrologer, who is here with me, Mr. Sandeep Shastry. And he is actually going to discuss something very interesting, very apropos to our time right now. And it's about Reza Pahlavi. And I will actually let him, I won't spill the beans. I will let him share with you as he goes through his very full explanation of the chart. Welcome, Sandeep.
Thanks,
How are
thanks a
you?
lot. Thanks a lot, Firoze. I really appreciate the time. I'm really excited to discuss about Raza Pahlavi and about Iran. And it's so dear to me because you are in our Iranian diaspora. You're part of the Iranian diaspora. And I have a lot of Iranian friends, and I have a lot of various stories, about the Shah. So the last 3, 4 weeks, I was busy, looking at the news, and because being a astrology buff, I thought about Reza Pahlavi, and I happened to get a good birth chart because birth charts are very important for any leader, and it
Right.
has a rating birth chart. So I was excited about it, and I looked at his chart, and I'm excited about it. So let us
Well,
start.
you and I were discussing this whole situation with Iran and everything, and I think that kind of encouraged you to dig further because you love researching. I mean, your whole thing is about researching personal, but also political, because you have written a book. I think you
Yes,
had predicted Mr. Trump being voted as president
yes.
when everyone else was basically saying, "Oh, you're wrong." And you also, I think, have written a paper on medical astrology.
Yes, yes. So a little bit about myself. This is a quick bio. I got passionate into astrology over the last 5 years. I was being an Indian background, so I got a degree from the University of Vedic Astrology. For nearly 3 years, I pursued it, part time, other than my regular job. And so I'm excited. I'm a practicing astrologer. A brief background, I am an engineer from India, and I did my master's here in the US and an MBA. And I have around 20 years experience in Silicon Valley. My interest in astrology is political astrology and medical astrology. I'm in the midst of writing a book about cardiac disease, and how you can see static potential about a person, whether it has a health disease, and see when the onset is. The US elections was very fascinating. The past election, that is 2024, everybody, Kamala versus Trump. But for me, what got me into the interest of astrology was, as I said, when I just started my program in 2020, was Trump's return. And this was after two of my notable predictions is after J6, and things were really down for Trump. I looked at his chart, and I felt that he definitely had potential to come back. And everybody, my wife especially, started laughing, and family thought I was nuts. But astrology just gives you patterns, and that doesn't lie. Astrologer might lie because of bias, but that's how it works. And
Right.
most recently, Zoran Mamdani. So you can look at my book. This is research about 21 elections over 13 US presidents, and I've come up with 5 factors. Anyway, today we are not here to talk about this. We're
Yeah.
talk about Iran
Mr.
and
Reza Pahlavi.
with Raza. Yeah. So the thing is, I know most of your audience here is, not everybody knows astrology. But I just like to tend to educate for any political leader. If you need to see whether they're going to win elections, there are set of factors and parameters. So I'll be just discussing a few things of what I see in Reza's chart. But for any person, when you look at, you need to have an accurate birth time. And that way, and even once you have a time, because twins have different lives, so
Right.
it's always important to validate the events. So I'll show some of the events. So I've already validated a few of the life events of his marriage, that of his father, the exile. So it all shows on the chart, and I'm pretty confident that the birth time which I have is quite good. So what are the four things? I'll dwell a little bit more deeper into this. Is once you look at the static potential, you need to look at how is the chart, whether this person would be a political leader, will he have a kingdom, or will he be part of the government? So that is there in the chart. Then whenever that happens, in Vedic astrology, you have Dasha system. So you have the Vinshotri Dasha, you have the Gemini Dasha. So you need to be running a favorable period whenever, whether it's elections, or in this case with Reza, because there's political turmoil in Iran. And
So,
then
Dasha's, I'm going to interrupt you for
yeah,
those people that don't know astrology, and if you could kind of um, explain it for those that don't know anything about astrology. So, Dasha means the period that the person that you're looking at the chart is running at that time, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
So everybody is born, there are many dashas and different systems. So what we use in Vedic astrology is the Vimshotri dasha. And so there are planetary periods. So the day you are born, based on the moon side, that's where the dasha starts. And
Yeah.
some dashas, like the moon dasha, can go for 10 years, and that's what Reza is. And each Venus dasha goes on for 20 years. And there is a set mathematical pattern of based on the moon in the sky when you're born, and that's how the time periods change. So
Right.
Raza just recently, I'll get into details about how his time periods have changed. So coming back to the factors, one important thing in astrology is you look at the double transits of Jupiter and Saturn, because they're slow moving planets. And there is another factor which not many astrologers use, but this is something which I've learned from my guru, Joni Petri, is looking at resonance with the nation's chart. So every nation has a birth time. So, for example, Iran has a birth time because in 1979, April 1st, 3 p.m., that's when Iran was born. And that is, it's part of mundane astrology, and we can dwell into that later.
But may I underline that that was when the IRGC took over?
Yes, this is April 1st,
Yeah,
1979 at 3 p.m.
right.
So the static potential. So some of you might be familiar with this chart, but the way it is. But uh, I don't want to get too complex about it. I just want to, based on this chart, he has a lot of leadership yogas.
Mm.
So in Vedic astrology, whenever you have something called Hamsa yoga, it is a Mahapurush yoga is a very successful, very powerful yoga. He's also got something called a Gajakesari yoga. So these are all leaders have this yoga. Like for example, Obama has a Hamsa Mahapurusha yoga, and many of the leaders, past presidents have had that. Then he has something called a Raja Yoga. Raja means kingdom. He's got 1, 4, 5 Raja Yoga. This is the best yoga any person can have, because one is your individual, that's the first house. Fourth is got to do with your seat of power, and it's very important for politics. And fifth house is got to do with Rajya, that is government. You also use government 9, 10. That's a beautiful Raja Yoga too. There's another system called Gemini, and he's got AKPK. So AK is again, it's a very leadership yoga for government leaders. And he's got AMK, DK. So that's also another potent yoga. He's born into a royal family, so obviously he has wealth. So he has a 1, 2 wealth yoga and 2, 5. So this says, when you look at the chart, when he was born on October 31st, 1960, he definitely has all the yogas which are required. So the key is, you might have the static potential, but when is it going to happen? Raza is now around 65 years. He was exiled. in 1979, and 1980 is when his father died, and he became the next proclaimed monarch of Iraq, in exile. So that happened at a time which that activated, but he never had any kingdom because he was in exile. But where now I see there is a big static potential because he is running a very good dasha, and that's my next slide.
Before you go to your next slide, can you explain what makes a Hamsa yoga and what makes the Gajakesari yoga?
Perfect. So what happens is whenever a Hamsa yoga is, so the basic astrology is you see the AS sign. So this is the first,
Ascendant.
the ascendant, and this is the South Indian. There is also a North Indian way. So the Hamsa yoga happens whenever Jupiter, that is, whenever Jupiter is in Kendra. So Kendra is whenever if it's in the first house, fourth house, seventh house, or 10th house. So since this is the first house, it's a very potent yoga because Jupiter is in its own house. So it has to be in its own house or an exalted sign.
Mm.
And this goes about ownership. So his Hamsa yoga is very potent, and he's got Saturn with this. Jupiter, Saturn is a leadership combination. Obama also, I'm going back to Obama because he again has a chart very similar, Jupiter, Saturn in the first house. And so that is a leadership chart. Many leaders have that kind of combination.
Thank you.
So the Gajakesari yoga is when both Moon and Jupiter, Gaja means elephant, and Kesari when Moon, Jupiter. And the good thing is Moon and Jupiter have social strength because Jupiter is in its own house in Sagittarius. Moon has got something called directional strength, which is called Digbala. So I'm getting a little technical, but this is for my astrology friends. It's a good primer.
Right,
So the good thing is he's running a moon dasha.
right.
So this Gajakesari, the yoga is getting activated. And
Mhm.
also, because Moon, Jupiter is getting activated. So the first house is getting activated, the fourth house is getting activated. So this is a segue.
Right,
So he started this Moon Dasha last year, Moon. And whenever you change a Dasha, so this Dasha goes for 10 years. So he's in his Moon Dasha. And what you see here is Moon is the eighth lord. So there are lordships in astrology. So whenever eighth house is got to do with transformation, change, and fourth house is got to do with residence, seat of power. So whenever, because Moon is the eighth lord, which has gone into the fourth, this definitely means change in residence. So this is definitely going to transpire. So it's all about the timing window. He definitely is going to move in the Moon Dasha, but when? That is what we're interested. So he's going to get out of exile, and this is the right Dasha because it's the 4-8 connection.
right.
One more thing which you can see is why is he living abroad? Why is he's born in Tehran? And in astrology, you can also see people who have 4-12 combination. 4 is got to do with your homeland, and 12 is got to do with foreign. So people who have left their country, they have a 4-12 combination. And in this case, Jupiter is the fourth lord and it aspects Mars, which is the 12th lord. So even Feroze would have the combination. I'm Indian, I'm settled in the US. So my 12th lord Jupiter is in my fourth house. So this is astrology, my friends. Patterns are there. It's definitely 8 out of 10 things, people would have the same patterns. You won't have 10 out of 10, but generally what I've observed, 8 of 10 people who live abroad have a 412 connection. Sometimes they have a 112 connection and it's shown in their chart. So what, as I said, he is the Dasha, which right now he's in Moon, is whenever so there is a change in residence. But what is more important is he's in the Mercury Dasha. So this is a sub Dasha. And this is when the 10th Lord is getting activated. So 10th Lord of career, government is getting activated. So the time period which has started here recently, this Moon, Mercury, started on March 8th, and that extends till 24th. So this time period over the next The whole moon dasha is definitely which runs until the end of the year is a good period, but this period till mid-April is a good period. He's also running something called in the Gemini system Sagittarius Dasha and Virgo Dasha. So Sagittarius, Virgo, Aquarius. So what you see here is Virgo is the first house. This is Virgo, and I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. This is Sagittarius is
First
the
house.
first house, and the 10th house is Virgo. So he's running periods which got to do with the first, the individual, the self, and the 10th, which is Virgo. And this time period runs until October. It started last October 2025 and it ends in October 2026. So this period is a very favorable period because all his yogas are activated. You remember I mentioned the AKPK yoga, Raja Yoga. Since
Right.
Virgo is owned by Mercury, this AKPK yoga, which is in the 11th house has got to do with gain. So this cries out loud, stating that there is potential in the next 6 months that in this time period, by October, that he will get something to do with government. And I'll speak more about it of what is happening in reality. So right now, as many people are aware, Raza has worked really hard with the Iranian diaspora all over the world. There were 100,000 people, I'm told, in Toronto for supporting Reza and the flag. Oh,
300,000
it's
in Toronto,
300,000. Wow. And, in London,
350 in Munich.
in Munich.
Yeah,
So those numbers are
250,000 in Los Angeles.
so the time period, the 10th house has also got to do with fame. He's running this Sagittarius period, he's running this Virgo period. The individual is getting up, everybody's talking about Raza. The mainstream media might not talk, but he's in touch with Witkoff, Trump's lieutenants, he's in touch with Netanyahu, because Trump has also talked about regime change and he has not talked about leaders. He's spoken about Reza, but he's not given too much of information. But
But it's not,
history,
it's not, it's not Mr. Trump's place to designate, and he can't be
which
known
is
or
which is true, but
shown. Yeah,
yeah, which is very true. And but one thing is that Trump is a catalyst who can help him get there. It's ultimately, as Reza has been talking about, it's the transition. He wants to either make it a republic, a republic with a democracy, or a monarchy republic, and
can
the
I,
people of Iran would decide. Yeah.
yeah. So what he is going in as um, as the first person who is going to go and basically put in place the different factors so that they can then bring about the vote, what you call it, the ballot boxes, so that people of Iran can choose what kind of a government they would like.
Perfect. I mean, he's going to be as he says, in all his media broadcasts, he's going to be a transitional leader.
Yes, transition.
He wants to care. He cares about Iran, and it's not about power for him. And he also has explained that he doesn't believe in authoritarian, and he wants to make it a democracy and a secular state. He has a 4-point program, and then there's the Iranian Prosperity Project. So what I see, as an astrologer, you need to see what is happening in the ground, what is happening. And he has got the support of the Iranian diaspora for sure. People in Iran, he definitely has support, but the media there is blocking things. So you don't know the actual support one gets. But when you see various sources, there are people, who are involved in the protests in January who support him. And but let's not get into that. But that is something where I feel, he's doing the right things. And, generally the dashas, whenever that gets activated, automatically your name comes up and you do the right thing. So I'm very optimistic about that.
So the
Uh,
time period you mentioned is from Basically March 8th when he entered the period of
Yes,
moon new
I'll have a
wisdom.
slide for the time period. So generally, you look at the four factors. So I'll address that in an upcoming slide. So the time period from now is going to be very good, and I'll share a few timing windows. So right now, so one thing which is the second factor which one needs to look is called the current transit. So this is the double transits of Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter and Saturn are slow moving planets. So Jupiter spends 1 year in a sign, and Saturn spends 2.5 years. So whenever the Jupiter and Saturn have an impact on the 10th house, that's when a career event happens. And as you can see, Jupiter and Saturn, right now, Jupiter is in Pisces. So it is activating his 10th house from the Lagna, from Chandra Lagna, which is you see it from different ascendants, and also looking at his 10th house from his Udaya Lagna. So Jupiter and Saturn both for the next 5-6 months, it's going to be looking at his 10th house, so which is a very favorable. So I've done research, as I said in my book. I looked at 21 elections of 13 US presidents who have accurate A or AA birth rating. And all of them, that is all 21 elections, they were going through time periods where Jupiter and Saturn were looking at the 10th house. And many times when I looked at the opposition candidate were not running periods of Jupiter and Saturn 10th house getting activated. So that becomes an easy thing, but this is a very important thing. And based on my knowledge, research in US elections and also in French elections like Macron and then a few of the other leaders, I've looked at it for France also. People who have a direct democracy and who vote for the president. So this definitely works there. And even for normal people. So when normal individuals like us, whenever we have Jupiter and Saturn, which is aspecting the 10th house or 10th lord, generally you get promotions or business is going well, or you get a new job. So that is something which people generally tend to look at the double transit.
And we are very lucky as Jupiter went direct today.
Yes, Jupiter definitely went direct in the East Coast around 11:30 to be exact. So this morning, I had a very positive life event this afternoon. I'll share that with you. And just when Jupiter went direct,
Excellent.
it does good things. So which brings a lot of hope. The fourth factor is resonance with the Iran chart. I did mention to you that Iran, the birth chart on 1979. So generally what happens is whenever you're a leader of a country, there is a karma associated with the country where you're born. And in this case, if you look at, this is the natal chart of Reza Pahlavi. He is running the moon dasha. So you look at this moon. So this is the fourth house. You see the degrees at 6.14. You look at the Iran birth chart, Mercury and Mars. This is 2 degrees and this is 3 degrees. So he's running this moon dasha, and Mercury and Mars are getting activated. So Mars in this chart is the 10th house of government in the ninth. So Mercury also is 12th house, which is again, change, which just change. So he's in his fourth house, is eighth house, fourth law, eighth lord in fourth. So what I'm trying to say is whenever you have your dasha of moon activated, and whenever things, planets in the natal chart of the country are activated, that's when you become president, that's when you become a leader. In this case, it can be a transitional leader. We don't know what yet, but there is a potential of him becoming a transitional leader and that activating. That is activating for now. He also has, if you look at the nodes, it's called Rahu Ketu. In Western astrology, it's north node, south node. Ketu and Rahu, here, if you look at this, is a 21 degrees, and this is 23 degrees, and Rahu Ketu. So this is again a destiny that he has a lot of planets associated with Iran. Now, for say example, when I did my research with Donald Trump, Donald Trump's Jupiter is a stationary Jupiter. He began his Jupiter Dasha in 2017, just when he ascended into the presidency in the first one. And he's been in that Jupiter Dasha. His Jupiter is at 24 degrees, and the Saturn in the USA chart, that is July 4th, 1976, is in the 10th house, both at 24 degrees. So there is a destiny, and this is I've done that research in the last all the 13 presidents. They have association with the USA chart of 1776. So this is something which I do give due credit to my guru Joni Petri, because this is where I learned. I learned from different gurus, and I always like to give credit when due. So now comes the big question: when is this going to happen? Astrology, it's all about timing. One needs to look at various windows. And where I see there is a lot of potential, I'm using the Gemini system. So I feel there is a very good potential of between April 1st and May 1st that Raza might get back to Iran. And if this window doesn't go through, I feel he'll go sometime in July and August. But having said that, this changes anytime from April onwards. I believe, is a good time. And the reason why I picked up Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, this is a 1 month window. So right now he's running Sagittarius, Virgo, Aquarius, and that gets over on March 31st. So if you see this chart, and Firoze, you're familiar with Gemini
Yes,
system. So if you see, this is Sagittarius, this is Virgo. So they are corners, and
right,
this is Pisces.
right.
So whenever he's running the this period, you see the AMK, which has
Right.
got to do with career, that gets activated. And since he's running Virgo, the AK and PK is getting activated. And there's something called a Karakamsha Lagna. People who are familiar with Gemini, his Karakamsha Lagna is basically Gemini. So whenever he's running the Pisces period, from Gemini it is 10 houses. So I feel, both Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces, that is an excellent period.
Mhm.
So if you see what is happening in reality, when Trump started, he said that this war might take 3, 4 weeks. So there is a possibility, and this is again, right now it might not be feasible, but there is a possibility in the month of April, by end of this month, this might get resolved. If it doesn't get resolved, it might get resolved in June, July, when Jupiter changes signs. It changes from Gemini to Cancer. This is sidereal zodiac which I'm talking about. So that is when I feel the next window. So the next window is Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini. So Sagittarius and Virgo literally remain the same. It's the third, the Pratyantar Dasha. It's the third time period. This becomes Gemini, and this is when the career AMK is getting activated. So that is a window. So this is for a astrologer who understands this. This is very easy, because this is a clean hit. It's not too complicated. So
It's
that
not too
is
complicated to see, right?
it's not too complicated to see. Of course, you need to be aware of it. But
Mhm.
anybody who sees this video, it's very startling to say that, hey, this time period is definitely worth seeing. But right now, if you look at what it is today, you see the media, you see oil prices so high, and you see, there's not much of Reza in the media. There are a few YouTube, BBC, some of Al Jazeera, they whenever he comes up with some meetings, a few they cover that, but there's not much. So right now it's all about the Shah, the son of the Khomeini. I forget his name, Mustaba, or correct me,
Mushtaba.
Mushtaba.
Yeah,
And
Mushtaba, who is actually in a coma, and it hasn't been confirmed. Some people think that he's already passed away, but we don't know.
yeah,
He hasn't appeared. Yeah. The
he
thing
hasn't
is, it
appeared yet.
depends what media stations you watch? I mean, he's been on every day just telling people to stay home, not to come out. And
Hmm.
then if you watch the normal media, they actually talk about how quickly, the project is going with America and Israel as far as what they have been able to bomb. So yeah, it depends.
Oh, it's there the Raza Pahlavi, he had this all-in podcast where he spoke, and then he's got a very strong team. There are venture capitalists, successful venture capitalists. I forget Sherwin. Pardon my pronunciations, but
Sherwin,
he's
yeah,
very successful. Then there is the Uber CEO. There are a lot of Iranian Americans. There are British Iranian Americans. He's got the mind share of all these people, and he also, when you look at his videos, he sounds very genuine, which is what, again, when you are running a favorable time period, you come across as genuine, and this is where it's shown in the chart. So
right,
his second house, he speaks very well, because the second house has got to do with voice,
right,
and that is Saturn, and it is with benefic Jupiter.
right,
So he speaks very mellifluously, and whenever you see his videos, it's very positive oriented. It's not very arrogant. So
right.
that again is shown in the chart. So some things are, you can see personality indicators, and those yogas, which is very positive. So
Fantastic.
I feel, I feel, and I've given my astrological prediction. So right now, today is March 11th, and to say that he's going in April, that sounds, because everybody's talking about this war ending, 3 months. It's going to be like a Iraq war. The media, you don't know whom to trust. But sometimes in astrology, you see some things which you don't get to see. Like, even like, one thing which I also do is I like to see what is there and what is going on in the ground. And one thing which has been very famous, which people use, is in politics, is prediction markets. So, say example, when I gave the Zoran Mamdani prediction market, in August, when I gave the prediction with a few of my astrologer friends, this was his elections were in November, and the prediction markets that time were 81%, and then it became 90%. So right now for Raza Pahlavi in Kalshi, or poly market, is around 25%, that he might get back to Iran by end of 2026. So sometimes these things change, and this is something also which I, as an astrologer, because I like to do research on data and also see what is there. So
Right.
25%, previously it was even lesser than what it was, say 6 months back. So these things change, and the stars change. Right now, Mercury is retrograde. After, what I feel is, after Mercury gets direct, because Jupiter just went direct. So the next 10 days, and another thing which I also wanted
March
to,
20th is actually when Mercury goes
Mercury
direct.
goes
So
retrograde.
that
Yeah, and
that
one thing which I wanted to, which I didn't cover, is right now Jupiter is at 20 degrees. Jupiter is at 20 degrees 52 minutes. Okay. It's in Gemini, and this is sidereal zodiac.
mhm,
And so Jupiter has just gone direct. So in the month of April, Jupiter will be transiting Mars. Okay. And Mars is 22 degrees here. Mars is basically the fifth lord, that is fifth lord of Rajya. And that Jupiter is going to be looking at Saturn
right.
and
Natal Jupiter.
Jupiter, the natal Jupiter. So basically, the first lord is getting activated, the fourth lord is getting activated. Saturn is right now just past. Saturn is at 7 degrees, and his moon is at 6 degrees. So he's just getting off the Sadhi, which is a very peak time. So Sadhi, sometimes people get married in the middle of Sadhi. So that is also, that 7 degrees is aspecting at the 7 degrees of the fourth lord. So the transits, when you look at the degree timing, April is really a big time when, this happens between, whenever 1 or 2 degrees, there's always 1 or 2 degrees, the event happens. So his fourth lord is getting activated, moon is getting activated, Saturn. Whenever Saturn is in the fourth house, that is also when people make a move. So he has to change residences. So that is, again, these are things where, all the stars are aligning
Right.
for him to make the move.
So
And that is the
Sandeep,
astrological explanation. Yeah.
right after he goes in, we're going to bring you for another interview to confirm. What would you like to get as a gift? A lollipop, 10 stars?
Nothing, for me, it's just I if this happens, first of all, it is world peace, for me, because after seeing the media over the last 1 year, I mean, I beg your pardon, over the last 1 month, I've been researching about Iran and the atrocities, and I've been speaking to you. A lot of my learnings about Iran is from you. And I
Wow.
have a lot of friends, I went to school in USC in Los Angeles. There's a big Iranian community there, and
Mhm.
also in California.
Right.
And what I want to see is peace, and also the next government works well with the GCC, because I hate to see the defense budgets go so high,
Right.
where that those money can be used and the world is in a better place. So for
Well,
me, if he gets there, yeah. Sorry.
source willing, when he comes in and in the next few years, I think the map of the world will change. It will have a major hand in making major changes.
Yes, because one
So
more thing, yeah.
yeah, we'll be hopeful. Well, thank you very much, Sandeep. This was very informative. Thanks again. And I promise that we will bring you back to confirm your predictions. I mean, you were correct with Trump. You were correct with Mandani, unfortunately, that he's there as far as I'm concerned. And source willing, you will be 100% correct with Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. Thanks so much, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thank
Um,
you. Thanks, Firoze.
and if you do enjoy these subjects, please subscribe, like, and comment. And if you have any questions for Sandeep, please make a comment. I will share his website and his information with everyone. Thanks again. Thank you for joining
Thanks
us,
a lot. Namaste. Yeah.
and bye bye.
Yeah.